of what if looking ahead to the NBA offseason and next season. Legs, what if Steph Curry does it again next year, wins another championship and finals MVP? Then what?
Man, oh man, if this guy gets 5 rings, or hey, Greeny, maybe they continue to win. Maybe he ends up with 6 rings and some finals MVPs under his belt to boot. I think then you're talking about top 10 territory all time. And anybody that wants to knock other aspects of his game, you got to ask yourself, hey, maybe this guy's offense is so dominant that he deserves that kind of recognition.
I think that's reasonable. He might already be there. Let's get to Zion. What if Zion plays a full season?
I think the Pelicans are a legitimate threat to be a solid playoff team in the West. I don't know that they can come out of the West, but when you start talking about a big three of C.J. McCollum, Brandon Ingram, and Zion Williamson, I mean, you talk about checking every box offensively that you need. That is a team that could be scary if he comes back in shape and stays healthy all year. Man, and C.J. McCollum there for a full season, the Pelicans are going to be a legit threat and one of the most entertaining teams in the league.
And then how about LeBron's Lakers? What if the Lakers' big three are all healthy this coming year?
Listen, I'm not going to write them off just based on what's happened here recently. If they're healthy, and I know that's a big if, I don't know that that's going to happen at this stage of their career. But if those two guys alone are healthy, LeBron and AD, and they put in 70, 75 games, and they're healthy for a postseason run, I think they're a contender again in the West because they're two of the most complete players in the entire league. And then you add a guy like Westbrook, if he's used properly, I think the Lakers absolutely talent-wise and on paper, that's a team that can get back into the mix for contention in the West.
I hear you. The problem with that is that used properly for Russell Westbrook probably means playing on a team LeBron James isn't on. And I don't mean that to insult either of them. But I saw no evidence, Bobby Marks, that their games fit together in any obvious way. And I think that was one of the many problems the Lakers had this year. But let's just take the question at its core. If we consider that a big three, if the Lakers' big three are all healthy next year, are they a legit contender in the Western Conference?
No, they're a play-in team. 9th seed. I mean, you look at this Western Conference is going to get better. Kawhi Leonard will be back. Likely Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. are going to be back. Golden State's not going anywhere. Phoenix, New Orleans, Minnesota, Memphis. I mean, we go down a list of teams here. They're staring at 9. But as Leg said, whenever you have LeBron James on your roster, that's always the wild card as far as doing something special. But they got a lot of work to do this offseason.
These are the odds that you see as of right now. The Warriors are the favorites to win the West next year, followed by the Clippers with a healthy Kawhi and Paul George. I mean, the Lakers would be definitively, in my view, at least, Tim, the second best team in their own building. In fact, you just talked about the Pelicans, who we don't see on that because Zion is the ultimate wild card. But Legs, I tend to agree with Bobby. I think that the Lakers' ceiling, as currently constituted, is nowhere near a legitimate championship contention. That is at least the way I see it. Now, is there a big move they can make? Perhaps. But as currently constituted, I can't see it.
Well, let's take a look at the rest of the roster first. Obviously, it's going to be key, but I think they're going to be better than Minnesota. I also think we're giving Denver a huge benefit of the doubt that Jamal Murray is just going to come back and look the same, or that Michael Porter Jr. is going to stay healthy. I think, Denver, we immediately ascend to contention status because we say, hey, when they get their guys back, well, okay, that's a big leap, to think that they're going to come back, look the same, be healthy, particularly in the case of Michael Porter Jr. So, look, I just think if you've got LeBron James having missed the playoffs on your roster, and Anthony Davis can stay healthy, those two players make up for an awful lot of mistakes with the rest of your roster. And when I said use Russell Westbrook properly, and it might not happen, he might not accept it, but that means to me, coming off the bench and being a guy that can stay true to who he is as a player, staggering your minutes opposite of LeBron James as much as you can, and letting him go be full throttle with a second unit group of guys. When he had that role after Kevin Durant left Oklahoma City with that kind of roster, he was an MVP of the league when he was able to just go be himself with other guys and let him go make all the decisions. You have to stagger his minutes with LeBron, though, in order to make that happen. Otherwise, they're stepping on each other's feet like you guys alluded to.
I'm with that, and that's going to be up to Russell Westbrook. I haven't seen any obvious reason to expect him to be satisfied in that role. I think that was a big part of the issue that he had with Frank Vogel this past year. As the offseason gets underway, Bobby, is there anything monumental they can do? Like, they've changed coaches. Is there any other significant move based on their cap situation and roster that they can do to help LeBron get markedly closer?
Well, it's not going to be Thursday night at the draft where they don't have a draft pick. I think they're going to probably buy in and get a second-round pick, but that's probably a developmental project. You've got 7 open roster spots, the veteran minimum exception, and the $6.4 million tax mid-level. If there was a deal for Russell Westbrook already, they would have gone out and done that. And they made it clear they're not attaching draft picks to just get rid of him. So how this roster goes next year is not going to be what LeBron James does or Anthony Davis. It's basically what Rob Pelinka, their general manager, is going to be able to construct. And they can't fall into that pattern of relying on veteran, older players as that insurance policy.
No, we saw where that led them this past year. They didn't even make the play-in, and we'll see where it goes. All right, so we'll have an eye on that. The offseason underway. Tomorrow night, to your point, is really the first huge night of it as we get to the draft and then the Kyrie decision and then free agency and all the rest of that. In the meantime, the big picture NBA topic continues with several NBA legends, and there's been so much talk. As you see Kevin Durant on the screen, let's just look at the most recent true legends in the NBA. Kobe Bryant won 5 titles in his career. The last 2 came with him as the focal point of his team. Back-to-back finals MVPs in 2009, 2010, won that grueling 7-game series against the Celtics. LeBron James, 4-time NBA champ, went to Miami and won those there with D. Wade and Chris Bosh, then went to Cleveland, pulled off an unbelievable championship. And that leaves us with Kevin Durant, who won his 2 titles after joining the Warriors team that had won 73 games the previous year. Since he's left there to go to Brooklyn, they've won just the 1 playoff series. And that has led to all of the conversation that has come up this week. Charles started it Friday on this show by using the term he needs to be the bus driver. I brought RG3 in here because I want to talk about that in a bigger picture. But before I do, very quickly, Bobby, without Kyrie Irving, we talked about Kyrie's and his decision a little earlier in the program. If Kyrie Irving should opt out of this and he doesn't wind up on the Nets, do they have any chance? Can Kevin Durant lead that team, him and Ben Simmons and whatever else they have? What are they?
I think the only place he'll lead him is to the play-in game again. That's it. And I don't even know if Kevin Durant would even make it through a season when he looks at what the roster will look like. Basically, him, Ben Simmons, and Joe Harris on an island to himself. And Kevin Durant hasn't proved that he can stay healthy the last couple of years. So that's the other what if here. So that for me is a play-in team without Kyrie Irving.
So would that lead one to wonder? There's no point in having Kevin Durant on a play-in team, right? So if Kyrie Irving opts out next week and he winds up someplace else, what are you doing right now if you're Sean Marks and you're Joe Tsai and you're running Brooklyn?
I'm looking at what the other teams have to offer for a Kevin Durant package.
You're trading Kevin Durant.
I'm not doing it right now, but I think now you have to kind of take the blinders off and now look at the big picture, because it's not going to be when, but when it's going to be what as far as him coming into you. Hey, we're in the honeymoon period right now, the offseason. When you get on the court in training camp and when you see what's around you and you go 4-10 to start the season, you think Kevin Durant's going to want to go through that type of season?
Particularly not when what he is doing right now is responding to a lot of the questions that get raised about him and his historical greatness, which no one is disputing that he's a great player. But let's put up again, Charles Barkley said what he said last week about the driving of the bus. And Cindy, let's put KD's tweet. Again, I'll just remind everybody, we posted it. Our Get Up social team posted what Charles said, and Kevin Durant responded this way. All this stuff is nasty. Another terrible analogy from a hating old head that can't accept that we make more money than them, more bread than them. It's just timing, Chucky. Don't hate the players. So that response and Durant's manner of handling these things has created its own conversation here. Right. And RG3, I know you've been watching and I know you have some thoughts.
Yeah, Green, Durant has been one of the most engaging superstars on social media for quite some time. And I think he's done this because athletes today try to control the narrative more than athletes in the past. You can do it with a simple tweet. So when you're talking about Charles Barkley saying that Durant wasn't the bus driver of that team, it's not like Durant was a spot-up shooter on the Warriors team. He's one of the most versatile scorers ever. He can shoot the three. He has the mid-range game. He can slash and dash and get to the rim. So I think in Durant's defense, he was essentially saying to Charles Barkley, look, you're a legendary player. You're a legendary TV personality. But on this one, you're wrong. And maybe Charles got a little caught up in the media game of saying provocative things. And Durant has been an easy target since the Warriors won this championship.
That said, and Tim Legler, I mean, we're going to adjudicate this thing a third time now this week, but what Charles said, you can disagree maybe with some of the specifics of the wording, but the general point that he's making, we all understand, which is that even if he was the best player, that wasn't his team. And if he's going to be on the list with LeBron and Kobe, like we just showed, and Michael and others, a list upon which his talent absolutely suggests he belongs, he's eventually going to have to win one with, quote unquote, his team, whether you want to call it driving the bus or however you want to phrase it, Tim. Yes?
Yeah, listen, I think Charles maybe took it a little bit too far because it sounded like almost like he was discrediting what Kevin Durant did in Golden State. He was the best player on those teams. But here's the thing. We all know this. Your historical legacy as an NBA player in particular, right, as that top guy that has to uplift and drive a team to a championship and make everybody better around you as the alpha, that is something that you need to get on your resume when these conversations come up about where you rank historically. It's just the truth. It's the reality of it. So you can say, hey, the guy's a two-time champion. We all know not every ring carries the same weight. I will contend till the day I stop doing this that the one ring LeBron won in Cleveland weighed more than both of the rings in Miami combined because of the magnitude and the context around it and what he was able to accomplish. And for Kevin Durant, I think some of that is true. He needs to get that on his resume. Look, no one's going to ever say he's not one of the greatest talents the league has ever seen. He's one of the greatest scoring machines this league has ever seen. But when you want to start talking about these lists that we put together, it is something that I think is important for that last narrative around Kevin Durant, to be able to check that box. I went to an organization, built it from scratch, and I was the guy that uplifted everybody around us to a place that the organization had not previously been in recent memory or ever in the case of LeBron James and what he did in Cleveland.
To me, that makes sense. I feel like you were, I couldn't read your face, RG3. Very quickly, I know I need to run, but as he was talking, I could not read your face. You were agreeing or disagreeing?
I'm disagreeing just a little bit because when you talk about LeBron James and the amount of titles that he has won, Durant's not there, right? He has to win more rings to get into that conversation, Legs. But when you talk about what he has done, he did lift the Warriors to a place that they were unstoppable. Yes, they won the ring before him, won it after him, but I think with the conversation about LeBron James and Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan, yes, Durant has to win more rings. I don't think anyone is arguing that. But he is one of the greatest players of all time, even if he only has 2 rings.
The beauty of this, Bobby, is that we can get into arguments, and at some point I lose track of what we're arguing about. I really do. I lose track of what we're disagreeing about. Quick thought.
Well, I mean, what's the definition of great? I mean, that's what it is. Is Kevin Durant a top 10 player in the NBA of all time right now? No.
Right.
Is he a top 20? Of course.
Yes.
So can another ring get him into that top 10? Yes.
Fair. See, leave it to Bobby. I make a reasonable